Let's flip it over to the Green Bay Packers. Usually we start on, because it's always like the losing side has more storylines and it's juicier, but we had to give the Lions their due right out of the gates. The Packers, they lose the game. The Packers fail to punch their ticket to the playoffs after climbing out of that hole. And I said this last night when it was time to make our picks. And even though I picked the Packers, in hindsight, I wish I hadn't, obviously, as I do most of the time after Sunday night. But when you're 4-8, you got nothing to lose. When you're 5-8, you got nothing to lose. When you're 6-8, you got nothing to lose. Now they're 8-8, one game, winning in. They got something to lose. They're a different team when they got something to lose. That's why they don't punch it through to the Super Bowl when they're the 1 seed. I thought if they get in as a 7 seed, they can be very dangerous because they're nothing to lose the whole way through. Last night they had something to lose and they lost. And the big question, we saw Aaron Rodgers declining to give Jameson Williams his jersey after the game, which was a gutsy move by Jameson Williams. I got it. Well done. Yeah, it takes some guts to walk up to the GOAT when you know. I think I'm going to hold on to this one. Yeah. James Williams, hey, can I have your jersey? Yeah, I'm going to hold on to this one because I may never play again. And that's the thing. We saw the long, slow walk off the field, arm in arm with Randall Cobb. It's not that was a gesture of retirement, Myles. He just doesn't know. He doesn't know one way or the other, so you have to assume. You don't know if you're going to be back, so you just assume I'm not going to be back because I don't know what I'm going to do. So I got to treat this like it's my last time off the field. So I don't interpret it to mean he's retiring. It's just a reflection of the fact that every season this year for him, or at this stage for him, it could be the last time he walks off that field.
Yeah, it could be. And look, I mean, I sort of saw that as, remember a year or two ago, I guess I can't really quite remember when it was, but you saw Ben Roethlisberger and Pouncey on the sideline of that last Steelers game. Was this last year after they lost at Kansas City, or was it the year before? I can't remember.
It was when they were getting destroyed by your Cleveland Browns in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those deals where you're seeing these two guys sit next to each other, these two people who have been teammates for a really long time, and they're just being a little reflective and they're taking in the moment, right? That's sort of what I saw it as. And because of that, you're right. We don't know if this is the last time we see Aaron Rodgers, and he doesn't know, and he's got to take that time and process and all those different kinds of things. But whenever you're watching the end with a legend, it hits you a little bit different, when you've been watching his entire career and you've seen all the highs and some of the lows. And frankly, Aaron Rodgers hasn't had that many lows, So this is an interesting time for him, and it's going to be an interesting time for the Green Bay Packers over the next month or two until they figure out what Aaron Rodgers is going to do.
Well, and who knows how long it'll be until he figures it out. The decision is not for the Packers to make. This came up back when they were 4-8, and there was talk about giving Jordan Love some reps. At what point do you put Jordan Love on the field? We saw him in that Sunday night game against the Eagles after Aaron Rodgers was knocked out of the game with a rib injury, and Jordan Love looked pretty good, and that sparked the conversation. But the bottom line is the contract that the Packers gave him last year ties their hands for this year. If Aaron Rodgers wants to come back, he's coming back, and he makes a total of $60 million this year. And, they can trade him. That's what somebody said at the time. Well, what if he doesn't want to be traded? What if he wants to play for the Packers? He said all along he wants to finish his career with the Packers. Oh, well, you can try to trade him, but if he says I'm not interested in playing for any other team, who's going to trade for him and take on that $60 million obligation? So he holds all the cards here. He's got all the power. The decision is going to be his and his alone as to whether he plays in 2023. Here he is from last night talking about his future after the loss to the Lions.
It's a little raw right now. It's just a little bit after the game, so I want to take the emotion out of it and have the conversations and see where the organization's at and see how I feel after some time has passed.
Is there any sort of timetable with that? Is there like a date where you want to make your decision by? Or?
Yeah, I'm not going to hold them hostage. I understand, we're still in January here. March is free agency, so just need some time to, like I said, get the emotion out of it and then figure out what's best.
Do you think is the decision all yours, you think, or?
No, I don't think so. I think there's got to be mutual on both sides.
So because your contract, obviously, you got the guarantee. So if they wanted to move on, or at least were open to it, would you be open to that too, or?
To what?
To going to a different team?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like saying never, but got to see how I'm feeling first once the emotion's out of it, and then have the right conversations and see what the best direction is. At some point, the carousel comes to a stop, and it's time to get off. And I think you kind of know when that is. And that's what needs to be contemplated. Is it time? Also, what's the organization doing? It's part of it as well. But the competitive fire is always going to be there. I don't think that ever goes away. Sometimes it gets transferred, I think, to other things that might not ever fill that large void. But like I said, I feel good about what I've accomplished in this league, and wouldn't have any regrets walking away.
Glassy-eyed as he speaks, I think he's done. Just after watching that, I think he's done. I think he knows he's done. And he could change his mind. But as he was speaking last night, and again, it may be no different than declining to give Jamison Williams your jersey and walking off the field arm in arm with Randall Cobb. He may just be assuming this is the last time I ever do it because he doesn't know. But boy, you could see the emotion in his eyes. And reading between the lines, first of all, it's not going to be a long decision like it was last year. In 2021, he took it all the way up to training camp. And he said after the fact he was 50-50 going into training camp. Remember, all the sports books removed the Packers' futures bets off the board. They got freaked out. They caught wind of the fact that he's thinking about retiring seriously. It's not just some bluff. It's not just some ruse. He took that all the way up to training camp. Remember all the dysfunction after they drafted Jordan Love? Like, we didn't know what was going on. Last year, it was in March. It was the Denver Broncos pivot to Russell Wilson the same day. Remember how the Broncos tried to tell us it had nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers deciding to stay with the Packers? Baloney. And I think Aaron Rodgers has already done the mental gymnastics, Myles, that got him to the point where he's never going to play for another team. And so the idea of him working something out with the Packers and he gets traded, I would be stunned if he plays for somebody else next year. But there's nothing about this sport that wouldn't stun me after everything we've seen in recent years. But I don't see that. I think that it's either Packers or no one. And what he's going to have to balance is it worth one more year, the year in which he turns 40? And is there an upside with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs? Alan Lazard's an unrestricted free agent. I doubt he's going to be back. It's Watson and Doubs next year. Is there enough from those two guys that he thinks can allow him to have a different outcome than what he did this year? Because that's the one thing that would bring you back. We didn't make it to the playoffs in my final season. We lost at home. I walked off Lambeau Field a loser in a win-and-in postseason scenario. That would be a pretty strong magnet to get him to come back once the dust settles on the emotion.
Yeah, and I think that when you're talking about taking the emotion out of it, that is what he has to balance, is whether or not it's worth one more year, or whatever it would happen to be, to push himself to that sort of physical limit that means being an NFL quarterback. And also, what would it mean throughout the offseason, right? And again, not to beat the dead horse about this, but we've talked ad nauseum about it. It was something where in the offseason, Aaron Rodgers did not have the same sort of level of commitment that we saw from somebody like a Patrick Mahomes, who brought people to Texas and was getting those guys, those new receivers, already with him. And now, really, Patrick Mahomes may be the MVP because of that. We didn't see that with the rookies in Watson and Doubs. And I think that was to the Green Bay Packers' detriment, because it clearly took a while in the season for Aaron Rodgers to get comfortable with those guys and for those guys to get comfortable with him. So, I mean, is he going to be all in like that? If he can make that kind of commitment, then yeah, I mean, let's go do it. But that's the kind of thing that he has to weigh in whatever these next few weeks are, or maybe the next month, whatever it happens to be, so that he doesn't hold the Green Bay Packers hostage, his words, during the offseason.
That was a point Peter King made back when it felt like it was bottoming out for the Green Bay Packers. And there was a Friday during the season where Peter and I squabbled over whether and to what extent Rodgers should have been there for the offseason program, should have gathered his receivers off the regular schedule of workouts and get everyone comfortable with him, etc. Peter came around, and Peter said, hey, if he's going to play next year, the Packers need to say to him early, we need you to be all in. It can't be cameo appearance in the offseason. You've got to fully embrace this job start to finish. I mean, how many millions do they have to pay him to get him to do more than the bare minimum, bottom line? So if he's not ready to make that commitment, then it's time to move on. It reminds me a little bit of what they did with Brett Favre 15 years ago, and yes, it has been 15 years, where they went to him in February and knew if you ask him in February what he's going to do the next year, and we need an answer right now, he's going to say, I'm not coming back. And They barricaded the door with furniture. They drafted, I think, 5 quarterbacks that year, and they hoped he wouldn't come back, and he did. That would be the one thing because you look for the parallels. They were showing last night parallels between the throwing style of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. It would be funny, and it would be very good for our business if Aaron Rodgers would retire and then when July rolls around, decide, you know what? I think I still want to play. That would be something if it happened, and that would be the ultimate parallel back to Brett Favre. Here he is on the question of, and this line reminds me of an old TV show, which did in fact exist, even though it was popular before Myles was born, from the 70s. Happy Days. Ralph Malph, played by Donnie Most. His catchphrase was, I've still got it. Here's Aaron Rodgers on the question of whether he's still got it. And it's fitting because it happened in Wisconsin. Here he is.
And the answer is yes. I feel like, obviously losing Devontae was a big deal. But, we didn't fill that void. And, I mean, nobody can. He's superhuman. He's phenomenal. But there was hope in certain things that was going to fill that void. And ultimately, that just didn't happen. The things that we were able to do, I think, may have been taken for granted at times because we were able to create so many different things in the moment over the years, and especially over the last couple of years, because not much really changed other than his absence from the lineup. Obviously, Marquez not being here, and some other pieces in the line, but I think that there's a lot of good young talent on the team, and if certain guys make the jumps from years 1 to 2, this offense could look a little bit different.
That's the draw. That's the attraction. And again, that gets back to he just didn't do what he needed to do to help those guys get comfortable soon enough. And there's nothing wrong with pointing that out. It's just amazing. We all have our flaws. And Aaron Rodgers, brilliant, great quarterback, one of the best ever. His flaw was he didn't do enough to help those young guys who were in awe of him. I remember making this point during the season. You had guys who were 9, 10 years old when Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl. How are they not trembling? How are they not? I mean, I told the story after Franco Harris passed of seeing him at the airport after a Super Bowl. My brother-in-law talked to him for 20 minutes, couldn't get away from him. I was afraid to say anything to him. It's Franco Harris. I'm the 7-year-old boy, offering a Coke to Mean Joe Green. I mean, you can't break out of that mindset. And it was for Aaron Rodgers to tear down that wall and get those guys comfortable so they could go out and have an impact right away. They showed the clip last night, Christian Watson, week 1. First snap from scrimmage offensively, 75-yard walk-in touchdown in his hands and out of his hands. I don't know. Did he not secure that ball because he just wasn't as a lot of things go into what makes you perform or not perform in the moment. And I can understand why all those young receivers would be very tight and intimidated and in awe and, frankly, afraid of Aaron Rodgers. And they got away from that, and the team got better once they did.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.